overreacting. Let me tell you something. That happened this morning. I heard a train whistle coming. I'm on the opposite side of the train tracks. But I couldn't stop there. I jumped back in my car. I'm a block away from the train tracks. I jumped back in my car. I gotta drive 2 more blocks to make sure I'm a safe distance away from the train. Because the train represents Armageddon. And being an adult, knowing I am hundreds of feet from the train track, I still gotta go a good 1,000 yards to get away from it! Because the train represents Armageddon!
Sorry, fairy tale, don't mean to traumatize you.
Hope they didn't bring back any bad memories.
Gives me nightmares, let me tell you.
I know.
Yes, we actually are having technical difficulties, so we have to use our video camera.
But you ain't gonna stop us.
Yes, ain't gonna stop us. So we apologize if the sound or picture or anything isn't the same. Like I said, we're having technical difficulties.
Yes.
This morning.
So I'm gonna have to lay things out and be able to reach a little bit.
Yeah. So we want to thank Paul from Scotland because, oh my goodness, we did a video a couple of weeks ago. And actually, it must have been before March 29th because he has sent us the information. Thank you so much, Paul, for going through all the time, the effort, the expense.
The personal expense.
Yeah, for getting this information. And, there was some interesting stuff in all those dots.
Well, that's what we're going to really be focusing on here is we're going to show how Watchtower manipulates and misleads. But before we get into the actual articles, I want to just maybe reread a couple of scriptures. I want to read it from Luke's account because we all know that when Watchtower sells their brand of religion, their cult, they always go to Matthew 24 where Jesus is sitting on the Mount of Olives, and they always focus on this one particular word, the presence of your presence in the conclusion of the system of things. Well, that word presence really can be used in a way that implies a lot, but doesn't really get to the main subject of what Christ was getting at. So I want to read it from Luke's account, Luke 21 and verse 8. And of course, we all know verse 7 says, Then they questioned him, saying, Teacher, when will these things actually be, and what will be the sign when these things are destined to occur? See, Luke doesn't use the word presence. See, so destined to occur gives a whole different connotation than the presence of the Lord. So verse 8, Christ says, Look out that you are not misled, for many will come on the basis of my name, saying, I am he, and the due time has approached.
Sound familiar?
Do not go after them. See, and that's exactly what is happening here. Look out that you're not misled. Many will come on the basis of my name. Well, Watchtower says, oh, see, we are the true religion. We're coming to you on the basis of the name of Christ. In fact, they've even gone one step further by recently qualifying that the governing body is the faithful and discreet slave. Okay, but Jesus says, do not go after them. So how is it that Jehovah's Witnesses are so easily misled when the Bible says, look out, do not go after them. Many will come on the basis of my name, but what's so unique about Jehovah's Witnesses is that they are the ones that say, oh, we're living in the time of the end. Thus the opening part with the train. See, 1914, Armageddon, there's the train. That one thing instilled so much fear into Jehovah's Witnesses back then. It was pathetic.
Yeah, and that particular opening picture is in the October 8th, 1968 Awake.
Yep. So how is it that Watchtower can mislead so many? Well,
I remember that.
Yeah, for my mother, back in 1972, started with this. So I want to just recall to memory your first things. Chapter 1. This is how it begins, people. Grand blessings from God near at hand. And of course, they've got this really nice picture right there, of what they presume paradise is going to be like. And then they quote Revelation 21:3 and 4. God will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. Well, hell, honestly, who wouldn't want that? Okay? Now, paragraph 1. Did you want to say something, dear?
No, I was just going to say that this is actually the 1968 edition. So
Yeah.
we have the actual edition.
Before they updated it.
that his mom was studying from. Yeah, 1968. So this is
The original.
Yeah.
Okay, so please bear with me because I want to show how the mind manipulation works. Okay? Do you want to live in peace and happiness?
Who wouldn't?
So when you begin reading that paragraph, your first question is, yes. Do you desire good health and long life for yourself and your loved ones?
Of course.
Mentally, you're saying yes.
Do you want me to play the householder?
Sure. Do you long to see wickedness and suffering end?
Yes.
Every honest-hearted person wants these things, and that's true.
Yeah. Where do I sign up?
Yeah. But today, in all parts of the earth, violence, crime, hunger, and sickness are increasing. Why is the world so filled with trouble? What does it all mean?
Yeah, I've often wondered that.
Yeah. Is there any sound reason to believe that conditions will really get better in our lifetime?
I don't see that happening.
Well, the second paragraph says, yes, there is reason for such hope, and it is clearly set out in a book that is published in more languages than any other book in the world. That book is the Bible.
Oh, I think I need a study then.
You need a study, exactly. It tells us of God's purpose to set up an entirely new system of things for mankind. If you had the power to do so, would you not bring an end to the conditions that cause so much sorrow? Of course you would. And there's the mind bending technique. Yeah, the hook in the mouth. See, right there. They just sold the mind manipulating concept. Should we think that the creator of mankind will do any less? The Bible tells us that God is love. Surely this Heavenly Father knows what mankind needs. He has the power to fulfill those needs, and He will most certainly do so. For Psalms 145:16 says of God, you are opening your hand and satisfying the desire of every living thing. When will God satisfy man's desire for true peace and happiness, along with lasting health and life? Must mankind wait 1,000 years or more? No! The time is near at hand. But how can this be? Conditions in the world are getting worse, not better. True, but the Bible clearly showed long in advance that these very conditions would be proof that we are living in the last days of this present wicked system.
1968, huh?
1968. Oh yeah.
Oh, it can't get much worse, can it?
Soon the loving Creator will bring to their end both wickedness and those who cause it. But God will richly bless the honest-hearted ones who want to do what is right. For He promises, the world is passing away, and so is its desire. But he that does the will of God will remain forever. Wow, what a beautiful concept to surrender your personal thinking ability over to. And there you have it. The first 3 paragraphs has just captivated the mind of honest-hearted people.
Wouldn't you like to ask your mom those things and see if she still believes this, the same thing that she studied back in 1972?
Well, yes, I would.
Do you still believe this to be true?
Yes.
Now, this is an interesting one.
Now you get up to chapter 11, entitled, The Last Days of This Wicked System of Things.
Page 95.
Now, before I get to that, I need to get to the scripture that they mistakenly and falsely sell. Paragraph 3. Jesus had just referred to persons who would see these last things. And again, the paragraph above it, Matthew 24, talks about the time of the end. When will these things be? When will these things be? And Jesus said, this generation will by no means pass away until all these things occur.
So he's talking about the people who are going to see all these things, huh?
Yes. Okay, so Jesus had just referred to persons who would see all these things. These things are the events that have taken place since 1914 and those yet to occur down to the end of this wicked system. Persons born even as much as 50 years ago could not see all these things. They came from the scene after the foretold events that were already underway. But there are people still living who were alive in 1914 and saw what was happening then, and who were old enough to still remember those events. This generation is getting up in years now. A great number of them have already passed away in death.
All of them?
Yet, Jesus very pointedly said, this generation will by no means pass away until all these things occur. Some of them will still be alive to see the end of this wicked system. This means that only a short time is left before the end. So now is the time to take urgent action if you do not want to be swept away with this wicked system. Now it's interesting that right after Watchtower says this means that only a short time is left before the end comes,
You want me to hold your book for
they
you?
go and in parentheses refer you to Psalms 90 verse 10. Okay, Psalms 90 verse 10. Now keep in mind, they've already qualified that the generation began in 1914. The generation that Jesus said would not pass away, okay, began in 1914. Psalm 90:10. In themselves the days of our years are 70 years, and if because of special mightiness they are 80 years. You all see where I'm going with this. You know, this is how Watchtower sold the absolute fear factor. See, in 1968, my goodness, if by special mightiness, you're going to live to be 80. But, 80 years, that's the end of a generation. Well, now we know that Watchtower has to backtrack and sell the overlapping generation ideas, because that's the only way to sell the concept of 1914.
Oh yeah, they got to hang on to that 1914.
Yes, but going back to the October 8th, 1968, the year that this picture came out with the train that instilled so much fear, even in the poor, dear soul of J.W. Fairy Tale.
Me too. Gave me nightmares.
Yes, but thanks to Paul, he was able to find the articles that Watchtower had referred to in this original article.
We're still looking for a couple of them, but we have found, he did find a couple.
But I want to start off by reading the first couple of sentences in this particular, I guess this was an Awake.
Yeah.
The year 1914 was not an ordinary year. According to God's timetable, that year really ushered in what the Bible calls the last days of this system of things. I want to focus on according to God's timetable. That phrase implies inevitability. See, God's timetable, inevitably, this is it. See, this is God's timetable. So inevitably, all these things are destined to occur.
It sounds like based around 1914?
Yeah, so what I want to do, I just want to kind of show here the article. What Watchtower did is they put in their words and then they quoted from the articles, their words, quoted from the articles, their words, quoted from the articles. But I want to go down to the third one because, well, you may have seen I kind of put my own little words right here. Mock.
Because that's what we do best.
That's what we do, exactly. Right here it says, August 4th, 1914, World I began developing. But did not World War II mark an even greater turning point? No, Watchtower says. Then they go off to the side column and quote from Trevor Roper, British historian, and they quote him in this article that he wrote. Now this is what Watchtower cleverly and misleadingly does. And this is why Jehovah's Witnesses can so easily buy this crap, because the whole concept of critical thinking was stolen from them in their Bible study program.
So do you want me to read what the Awake says?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, since I have my glasses. Okay, so this is how they have it quoted. The First World War marked a far greater change in history. It closed a long era of general peace and began a new age of violence in which the Second World War is simply an episode. Since 1914, the world has had a new character, a character of international anarchy. ... Thus, the First World War marks a turning point in modern history. And that's Trevor Roper, the British historian, August 1st, 1954. And Paul just happened to have found the article for us.
So what I want to do, and I don't know how well our camera can pick this up, but this is the article that Watchtower is quoting from. Now, before the ... I have highlighted in yellow the first part of where Watchtower begins to quote from.
Okay, it is right here.
Okay, that's the first part. Now, all of this right here, all the way up to this next highlighted, is all of the ... that Watchtower cleverly left out.
So it isn't just a phrase or two,
No.
it's like a half of an article.
It's several paragraphs. So the Jehovah Witness that was reading this back in 1968 bought into the absolute fear factor because they didn't have access to the article like we do today via the internet. So what I want to do is I have cleverly read through the ... and picked out some of the things, so now we can put into absolute context what Trevor Roper was saying. Now, prior to the ... prior to, I want to read a little bit of what Trevor Roper was saying here. Now remember, Trevor Roper is a historian. Watchtower is not. Watchtower steals from the historian and manufactures their own sleeping pill.
I wonder how Trevor Roper would feel now about how they've changed what he has said to mean
exactly.
something different.
It is instructive to compare the First World War with the Second, the Kaiser's War with Hitler's. So what he's doing is he's comparing these two wars now. See, the Kaiser was the leader of the First World War, and as we know, Hitler was the leader of the Second World War. So this is what he's comparing. He's not comparing the World War I being the turning point. He's really saying this marks the difference between the Kaiser's War and Hitler's War. So Watchtower now has got things completely out of context. So he goes on. The second seems at first slight more significant. It was longer, costlier, and more extensive, and in its issues more terrible. Well, right there, he says World War II was more terrible. Right there. My God!
Well, that's not what Watchtower said.
No! For the conquest of Europe by the Kaiser could have been less terrible than its conquest by Hitler. You have to forgive me because this is kind of blurred and it's kind of at an article. It's not. So it says the Second War was also more ideological in its character. It was a war of creeds and social systems, not merely a war of nations. So the very concept of World War II blows away World War I, doesn't it? Because now it's not just a war, now it's a war of creeds, a war of social systems. See, there's a whole big difference there. Okay, carrying on. And it was more purposeful in its aim. Hitler knew what he wanted with a terrible clarity and consistency, while the Kaiser did not.
And then they have then comes the first part of Watchtower's quote from the
Now, what Watchtower did, because Watchtower doesn't put all of this in context, Trevor Roper says, nevertheless, now comes what Watchtower stole. The First War marked a far greater change in history. It closed a long era of general peace that began a new age of violence, in which the Second War is simply an episode. Since 1914, the world has had a new character, a character of international anarchy.
And that's where they put the ...
Yeah, exactly. And that's where they put the ... Now, let's continue on the next paragraph. Consider for a moment the world before 1914, or at least the Western world.
So he's not talking about the world in general, all going to hell in 1914.
He qualifies what he's talking about by saying, let's consider for a moment the Western world. For a century, peace had been the rule. Wars had been brief and local, and materially, prosperity had enormously grown. The center of this prosperity had been Europe, and the undisputed capital of the world. Europe, through the industrial and financial power, dominated Asia and Africa. It had populated Oceania and America. The next paragraph that Watchtower leaves out. The European powers were rich. Their systems of government, even if they seemed harsh then, referring back to World War I or 1914, seem relatively liberal now. Oh, wait a minute. Doesn't the word liberal kind of give a connotation of peace, prosperity,
tolerance?
Now remember, he's writing this in 1958. 1954, which means World War II had ended approximately 9 years prior to him writing this. So now that World War II has ended, you could see that the world was beginning to be more tolerant, more liberal. But see, Watchtower doesn't focus on that. They focus on the fear factor. See? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to where Watchtower has gone into the thus, after the ... Thus, the First World War marks a turning point in modern history.
And that's where they put a period and end it.
Now I'm going to go on. It was the first stage. Oh, in other words, it's the first part in a continuance of things that happened. It was the first stage in the suicide of Europe, the continent which in the previous 4 centuries had populated, conquered, and industrialized the rest of the world. Now he goes on just a little bit, and now I start to see the word inevitable. Okay? Now he goes on and say, as some historians have asserted, an inevitable consequence of industrial imperialism. Now he gives his own thought. First, I do not believe the outbreak of war in 1914 was an inevitable consequence of any economic or other development.
So it appears he doesn't think that it was a war that changed history.
Right. Nothing in history is inevitable. The doctrine of inevitability is simply an easy device whereby historians avoid the responsibility of historical thought. And I'm going to end it right there. But the key word is, it's an easy device where historians avoid the responsibility. But Watchtower turns around and uses that inevitability word and redefines it by saying, according to God's timetable, World War I was inevitably going to happen because it's God's timetable. You can't stop God's timetable. So now,
Do we want to go to the next quote now?
yes, I do. I want to go
This one
to
was
the next
interesting.
quote.
Okay, so let me read over on the left-hand side what the Awake has about this quote. However, this is not just an American view. No, it is the view of authorities all over the world. Okay, so let me read the quote that they have here in the
Now,
Awake.
yeah, and we're quoting from the London Star, August of 1960.
August 4th, 1960. Okay, now this is what Watchtower has. If, ... the human race survives, some historian in the next century may well conclude that the day the world went mad was August 4th, 1914.
Before we read that, I wonder what historians feel about this.
9/11, 2001. 4 planes change America and the world forever.
Did you notice what the reporter said? 9/11 would change the world we live in
And
forever.
I've even heard other countries say that what happened at 9/11 in New York City here in the United States is truly a day that changed the world.
Yeah.
And I know it certainly changed this country.
It changed everything.
Yeah.
It truly did. Conspiracy theories aside or not, we have all lived in a very different world
Yeah.
since September 11th.
So, I mean, technically, Watchtower, if you want to get technical, we're of that generation because we seen that in 9/11.
Yeah. Yes. But let's get back to the
Quote.
to the infamous Watchtower's misquoting and misleading ability of its readers.
Yeah. If ... the human race survives.
Okay, now I'm going to fill in the ... If we all get the nuclear madness out of our system and the human race survives, some historians in the next century may well conclude that the day the world went mad was August 4th, 1914. Well, here's what's interesting about all of this. Let's put this whole article, or this portion of the article, in complete context. The title of this article by the London Star, August 4th, 1960, says, War Date Forgotten.
See, and they don't tell you what the name of the article is here in the Awake.
No, the war date forgotten. London, August 4th, AP.
So you mean this really doesn't have anything to do with the
No.
day the world changes?
No, it doesn't.
Changed?
Okay, now remember, this was written in 1960. 46 years ago today, the old order ended. But so much has happened since the day World War I started back in 1914. That little, there again, this is kind of blurred, so excuse me. That little notice was taken in Britain on the anniversary day. Oh, by 1960, the British people forgot what happened. I guess 1914 wasn't such a big event, was it, Watchtower? Because 46 years later, people are forgetting about it already. Only one national newspaper remembered the day editorially. There was no observance to mark the end of an era of casual existence when people crossed borders without visas and European royalty was united through the children of Queen Victoria. Europe went gaily to war on August 4th, 1914, confident the soldiers would be out of the trenches by Christmas. Few foresaw the consequences of the tragedy that began with the assassination at Sarajevo. The Star commented editorially today, "If we all get the nuclear madness out of our system and the human race survives, some historians in the next century," we're already at the next century, are we? "may well conclude that the day the world went mad was August 4th, 1914. Well, you know what?
No, historians say the day the world went mad was 9/11.
September 11th. So you can see why it's easy for Watchtower to sell the propaganda. They used the fear technique. They misled people because people were not following the words of Christ. In Luke, when he says, "Look out that nobody misleads you. Many will come on the basis of my name, saying, 'I am he,' and the appointed time, aka 1914, has arrived." Watchtower says this generation will by no means pass away
They're dead.
until all these things occur, including the start of the Great Tribulation. Now Watchtower get caught again with their shorts down around their ankles. They're embarrassed. They're openly exposed and naked. They fell asleep along with all the Jehovah's Witnesses that were supposed to be on the watch. Remember, stay awake so that you don't get disrobed. Watchtower, you've been disrobed. You've been embarrassed, and now you make an excuse. Oh. That generation. See, Jesus really meant that generation is going to overlap. No, Jehovah's Witnesses. That's not what Jesus meant. Watchtower selling another bucket of crap. And you're so asleep, you're so afraid to do research, that you just follow it like the lambs that are proverbially being led to your slaughter. Okay, there's a famous song, "I'm on the highway to hell." That's where you're at, Jehovah's Witnesses. You're on the highway to hell. Yep, Jehovah's Witnesses, your freedom is absolutely on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
Break away from this fearful concept that, if we leave Jehovah's organization, God's going to kill us. No, that is a mind-altering propaganda technique used by Watchtower to have you follow their line of crap. That's all it is. Your freedom is absolutely on the other side of the fear-monger that is the Watchtower Bible Trap Society, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You're in a trap. We're here to help you to open that trap so you can release yourself. Break away from the mind control. The technique, it's fear. Every religion uses it.
Yeah. And there is a new YouTuber that we wanted to welcome. There's actually a couple of new YouTubers. But Spike Space R, apparently he used to be an elder. And he is starting to do videos now. And He's got one that we watched this morning, the very first one of his that we have watched.
That we've watched.
That we've watched. I don't know what his first one is, but this is about the Judicial Committee, and it's really interesting. Yeah. And so, I think this guy might be someone to watch and might be a force to reckon with. And especially when he starts reading from that Elders book.
Yeah. So again, we want to thank Paul.
Yes.
Personally. For doing this. I know when Kim and I had done that video, we had mentioned that we had spent some time trying to track these items down online, and we just couldn't do it. So Paul actually forked out some of his money to purchase these articles. And so Paul, I cannot thank you enough. And hopefully the way that we have been able to present this, mockingly or not, that a Jehovah's Witness will watch us and be able to realize how you've been misled. And Jesus said, look out that nobody does it, but somebody has done it. The Watchtower Bible Tract Society.
And fairy tale, there's no reason to be afraid of this anymore, because we've just debunked it and thrown it in the trash heap.
We love you too, Tom. Trust me, we love you, brother.
We love you, sweetie, and love all of you, and you all have a great weekend.
Bye.